somebody who helps us all learn more about what's going on in the world when it comes to half-assed or full-assed governments is the economist from the CTU. It is Graig Renney. He joins us right now. Kia ora and good evening, Graig. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Pat?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just thinking, actually, I should probably have some documents to show the people as to what we're talking about. I might pull something up because we're talking about the gender pay gap, yeah? And I don't have any documents up, but what we'll do is I'll very quickly search and I'll get the story. There we go. RNZ's a good one because that gives us this headline of the headline seems to be, well, it seems to be very confident, the RNZ headline, into what's going on, but we may have some questions around it. So let's yank this up there. RNZ reported earlier in the week, a couple of days ago, yesterday, how did the gender pay gap get smaller? RNZ investigation. I think it sounds like it stopped with the press release from the government. New Zealand's gender pay gap has narrowed to its lowest level on record, and one economist says some sectors have contributed more to the improvement than others. Stats NZ said on Wednesday the gender pay gap was a median 5.2% in the June quarter, down from 8.2% a year earlier. Now, a little bit behind the curtains, Graig and I have already done a podcast on this today, pretty much, haven't we, Graig?
We have.
It's going to be coming out at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Once I throw you the ball, do you think it would be worthwhile me getting that number 6 slide up to show them?
Why not? We can use it to explain. Why not?
We can use that to explain.
We are giving the magic away here, Pat. Where the number number 6 slide.
But you do say in the podcast tomorrow that comes out tomorrow morning, I'm going to do a full breakdown on this on Thursday night's edition of Big Hearing You. So tomorrow morning, people are going to need to come back and have a look at tonight, and it'll be good to figure out what's actually happening. So let's have a look at it. Let's tell us what you know and what you can show us while I open up this PowerPoint and I'll get to that slide. The gender pay gap, what we've been told is great news. Yep. Great news. So, gender pay gap better than it's ever been for a massive amount of time.
So we're talking about a very specific gender pay gap here. Let's be really clear. We're looking across the economy. We're looking at all wages and salaries. So this doesn't include benefits. This doesn't include unearned income. This doesn't include other forms of income that come from other sources. This is just wages and salaries.
Okay.
So the real pay gap, when you include all those things, is much, 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 much larger. So this is a very narrow subset of the entire pay gap across the economy.
So basically employees, whether you're getting a salary or drawing a wage, it's the employees of New Zealand gender pay gap.
Yep. There's just shy of 3 million people around the country who draw a wage or a salary of some description. And that includes, that will include 12-year-olds who are working.
Sure. Yeah.
So you've got to be slightly careful. But in terms of the data, we start out wide. Everyone, there's a really big pay gap because there are a lot more women on benefits than men. And as a consequence, the pay gap, if you started to include benefits incomes, would also be larger. We also have more elderly women in receipt of superannuation because they survive longer. So the pay gap would be larger on the other side as well. Long story short, when we look at that data, RNZ is not wrong. The official data says that the pay gap for wages and salaries declined to 5.2%. It fell from 8.2 to 5.2. Now, a fall of 3%, that's the biggest fall that we have data for, and I can take this back to 2008.
Because that CTU numbers go back that far, eh?
Yeah, and official data goes back that far in terms of readily available data. And you can see on the screen here, you've got 2 lines, and this is why this becomes important, because the orange line, which is the median line, and let me just explain to the audience, just in case anyone doesn't know what we mean by median. Median just simply means middle. So
now, we talked about this afternoon, and what I said was if you had 10 people and one of them was earning $1 million and the other 9 were earning $50,000, the 5th person, the median would be $50,000 because that would be the middle person. So it's got nothing to do with total. It's literally the one that sits in the middle.
one that sits in the middle. So if
Yep.
you had 9 people, it's the 5th person in the middle. There's 4 either side.
Yep.
And if you look at so that median gap, Stats NZ uses that median gap as the official measure, and it uses that because it believes that that's a better measure than the mean measure, which is the kind of classic average. The mean average is simply you take all of the wages and then you divide them up by all of the people and you get an average wage.
So my silly example of 10 people, if you had one person earning $1 million and 9 person earning, I'm doing this in my head, 9 person earning 50, that's 450K. So that'd be 1.45 million. Then you divide that by 10. So in my group, the mean would be 145K. The median would be 50K because that would be the middle person, which really goes to show we need to know which one we're working with and what it actually means.
And in terms of the data, why this is really important is that those differences are quite large. But when you have really big populations, when you're doing this over 3 million people, it's a lot less variable.
Sure.
And importantly, we at the CTU have been using the mean number since 2008 because if you increase the minimum wage, it makes no difference to the median wage, to the median pay gap. If you have someone at the very far end, if you have a group of individuals who make sky-high salaries, it makes no difference to the median. The pay gap still looks the same.
Yeah.
And so we in the CTU, we use the mean number. Now, what you can see here is the median has changed a lot. That's 8.2 to 5.2% fall. Yeah. But the mean has barely changed at all.
I just think it's quite important to point out one thing, and I know you're all very smart who are watching and listening, but I got a bit confused with this because the graph is like reversed because it says it's going up, but that's because it's 0 at the top going down, in case you're on a small phone. So 0 would be at the top, and then it goes -2, -4, -6, -8. So in other words, even though it's an upward incline, that means it's going from just over -8 to just over -5. So just in case, it's just me, it's probably just me, everyone's smarter than me, but just because that's it. So this one here is the middle, this is the median, and this is the mean, this is the average.
Correct.
Okay.
And what this is demonstrating to us, to the best of our knowledge, essentially is what's going on with that middle worker. Yeah. And our best analysis here is that over the past couple of years, we saw some quite big, quite good pay increases for nurses, for teachers, for some public servant groups. We also saw some pay equity deals delivered. Nursing, for example, saw a big pay equity deal. We saw social workers, orang tamariki social workers, receive a pay equity deal. As a consequence, that's affected the middle worker. And that's shifted the needle for that group. But for everybody else, the distribution of the group, it hasn't moved them at all.
Yeah.
So outside of that narrow band, the pay gap has done extremely little. And if you're in the private sector, which is where you get most of that low income group and high income group, your pay gap has done nothing.
Yeah.
And so the challenge here is that what looks on the surface as a really good result. And I would be delighted, I would be over the moon if we had seen a pay gap of that size really fall. Because that would be demonstrating we were making real progress on closing a gap that does not have any justification other than discrimination.
Yeah. So you're kind of saying it's not really hidden, but there's some nuance which is being left out of this conversation. Everyone's just dancing, saying, look how good we are for women. The gender pay gap is so, but what you're saying, the other way to think about the median versus the mean is for the most of us, there's not much difference in the pay pack. The pay pack hasn't changed that much, even if the middle person is now sitting in a different place. But overall, the pay is kind of the same.
And the key thing here is that it's the pay of the middle female versus the middle male. right? Because the pay of the middle female rose 5%, which again suggests it's collective agreements moving
Right.
the needle in the background. The pay of the middle male rose 1.9%. As a consequence, go on.
I was just going to say, because you're talking about that there's been kind of decisions made that help this. We've had all these cases of pay equity be cancelled. Do we have any analysis of what they would have done, or do we have any idea of what they would have done that now they won't be because they've all been cancelled?
No, like everything else in pay equity, the decision was made at pace to save the budget because they were lying about the numbers and their ability to deliver the tax plan that they had promised to deliver. And as a consequence, they did no analysis, because if they had done the analysis, they would know the number, they would know the result, and therefore they would be accountable for that result.
I suspect this question is going to stick in your craw because you're an economist and you want to be exact and precise. But what does your gut tell you would have happened to the pay equity or the gender pay gap if those pay equities had have actually all of them gone through?
Well, it's quite a straightforward question. There were 180,000 workers with live claims. There were 330,000 workers who either had a claim that was settled or was in the process of being renewed, including care and support workers, some of the lowest paid workers in the country. So you've got 330,000 workers who could have been affected. The average pay increase from pay equity was around 30%.
Right.
So you've got a very large group who generally speaking, low paid, female dominated workforces. And, I don't need to be accurate to 3 decimal places to know that would have had a very significant impact on the gender pay gap. It would have had a very significant impact on the lives of those workers and their families, because this is the thing. It doesn't benefit me as a male to have a pay gap for females. I'm not any better off because women are not paid well. In fact, I'm worse off as an economist, right? I'm worse off because women don't have that income. They're not outspending. They're not delivering economic growth, not through any fault of their own, but just simply because they're not paid the money that they're due because of gender discrimination.
Right. Do we have any data, any analysis within the gender pay gap over different socioeconomic groups, different races, and how they're going, and what do we see in those?
We absolutely do. So we can look at the gender pay gap for different ethnicities, and if we look at the biggest pay gap exists between Pacifica females, or what Statistics New Zealand calls Pacific peoples females, and European men, like me.
Right.
And the gap there is 23%.
Wow. So you're looking at what 10? I'm looking at the numbers here, like 8-ish% of the average, 8 point whatever it is for the average overall, but 23 for Pacifica women and European.
And
men.
if I look at then for Maori females, for Wahine Maori, that then becomes 20%.
Wow.
And then for European or Pakeha females, it's 10% against European men.
What happens when you bring in Pacific men, Maori men, that sort of thing? Like if this was a scale of who's earning the most, and obviously you're saying the biggest gap is obviously the most is Pakeha men, the people earning the least is Pacific women. Where do the other sexes come in on that as well?
Well, as ever, tall, handsome white economists like me, we do quite well. And so, we're top. There's nobody above us. There's just us. But if I look at Pacifica males, the only group who are paid worse than Pacifica males are Pacifica females.
Wow. So it goes Pacifica females, Pacifica male, and then I'm assuming Maori woman.
Maori, Wahine Maori, and then if I look at Maori males, Kaimahi, then I could say, okay, Maori males are paid worse than European females.
Right. This is starting to feel like the version of colonization where the wealthy British have the peasants, and then maybe under the peasants it's the lepers, and it's like, the most successful peasant is still nowhere near the least successful upper class white woman sort of thing, and there's no, like, a caste system, there's no jumping between them sort of thing.
Well, on average, a Maori male is paid worse than the average female across the economy.
Yeah, obviously there's going to be some very wealthy Maori men and some very poor, but yeah, on average. Yeah.
On average, these things are all, averages. And so you're right, there's more than one level of that discrimination. So you've got gender discrimination, and intersecting that, you've then got ethnic discrimination as well. And all of these things compound on each other. And so we don't have the data here in this set, but my guess as well is that you could put age on top of that as well.
And what about things like disability? I mean, that's a vulnerable group for people earning as well.
Well, we know that amongst the disabled community, less than half of the disabled community are in work.
Yeah.
And so there are many, many disadvantages here. Now, this is a problem in communities around the country. But if you're in a community, say Auckland, where the cost of housing keeps being enormously expensive, where access to work is highly insecure, where you don't necessarily get the hours that you want, this is where having a really good welfare state, benefit system, public services can act as a cushion in that space. But we've got a government that's doing the opposite on that and compounding that problem as well. And let me give you an example.
Yeah.
The changes to ACE support, the Family Boost programs, you have to claim them by receipt, and you have to claim them. You have to pay for them first, and then wait for IRD to pay you back.
Correct.
Well, guess what? If you don't have it, you can't claim it, because you don't have it to pay it out, to wait 3 months to claim it back quarterly. But people like me do. And so what looks like a system that's equal and supposed to be making access easier actually works in the opposite. And the data we have here tells us that, yes, we might say on a very narrow group for a very small bunch of people, the gender pay gap has closed. But actually, when we look across the economy, there's still huge amounts of work to do. There's still huge amounts of need that's not being met. And there's still a huge gender pay gap problem to actually address. And unfortunately, the engines that were solving that problem, pay equity, collective bargaining, fair pay agreements, they've all been removed. Where fair pay agreements have gone, collective bargaining, the government is offering 0% increases to some groups. And pay equity, the government has removed access to that for so many groups where they're unlikely to see benefit for at least 10 years.
So where does this leave us both in the conversation around the gender pay gap conversation from today? Like, I think we've painted a pretty clear picture, as in the devil is in the detail, as we always say. That it might look, this feels like it might look good on paper, but when you drill down to it, there's actually 3/5 of fuck all difference. But what about moving forward? I mean, I'm assuming if I asked you the question, is the gender pay gap actually going to be worse under this government? Although the mean does say it's going up as well. But is this government worse than the previous government? Is this just a continuation of the past 40 years of bad? Where to from here?
Well, because I'm an intensely sad individual, Pat, as you're well aware. I can look back in time and see what the evidence tells us for the gender pay gap. And I can say, when did it get better or worse? And we can see when we look at the data, the gender pay gap in 2012 was 9%. And then it rose to 11, and then 11.7, and then 12%. And the only reason it fell was in 2017, when we had the Terra Nova settlement case, when Christine Bartlett won that case, and the government eventually settled when care and support workers got their pay equity deal, and it fell then. But under the previous government, there is this period after 2012 where the gender pay gap starts to rise again. And it's my expectation, if nothing else, that we will start to see the progress that we've made over the past few years start to disappear again, just mechanically, because the engines of that positive change have been switched off. And then finally, if you have a weaker labor market where there's more unemployment and more people are chasing every hour of work, that gives employers license to offer less money, offer more insecure terms, which again tends to affect women more than men, because women do more part-time working. They've got more, rightly or wrongly, tend to have more caring responsibilities than others. And so we need this isn't a solution that's just inside people's pay packets. This is a solution that is about care, is about ECE provision. This is a solution that's about access to work, right? We're not going to solve this problem one way. We have to solve this problem multiple ways, but that unfortunately requires a government that actually cares about this problem rather than a government that doesn't.
Craig, as always, lovely to talk to you. There's a message for you here in our chat, which I will read out. It's from Kiwi Bird. It says, Kia ora, matua, Craig. Yes, you are a BHN matua now. So
that's very kind of you. Thank you, Kiwi Bird.
From Kiwi Bird. There is a podcast coming out tomorrow morning. Do you want to tell the whānau what it's all about and what they can expect?
And so the podcast tomorrow morning, 4:00 from Locked Out with Graig Renney, episode 20. We've made it to episode 20. No one's more astonished than I. My patience with myself is astonishing. But in terms of the actual data, we've looked at what the Reserve Bank has been putting out for the past few months. They've been putting out forecasts of where the economy is, and essentially the recovery for the economy. We keep being told better times are ahead. The economy keeps going backwards and backwards, and the recovery keeps going backwards and backwards. And the data tells us that those green shoots are just as far away as they were 6 months ago. And why we should be very careful when someone tells us, as Christopher Luxon did a couple of weeks ago, that the country's turning a corner and that the good times are just ahead of us, because the data every time we look at it, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel keeps getting longer and longer and longer.
Oh, that's so depressing. You can see the light, but it's like when you are stuck in a dream or a horror film, and you keep running towards a light, and it keeps going further. What a depressing thought.
So yes, so that's the podcast, but obviously in lots more detail. And really keen to hear from your viewers and listeners. If they've got any questions they want answering, if they've got any questions that they want me to look at, just ask. This is why we're here. And
I think people can now actually go to lockedoutpod.nz. Shall I check it? www.lockedoutpod.nz, because some cheeky blighter decided to take lockedout.nz before we got there. Yep, so lockedoutpod.nz gets you here. All the episodes thus far. And then there is a contact form that you can use if you want to put something through to us, and we get that. Also, Craig, I was going to say, you've got a little bit of a TV appearance this weekend.
I do. So hopefully I'm going to
tell us about your tell us about your little TV appearance this weekend.
So subject to change, obviously, because we're still early in the week. So it's not this weekend. It's next weekend. But it will be. I'll be on TV. I'll be on Q&A answering questions about the economy, talking about the economy. So yes, so next Sunday, not this Sunday.
So I think that you, Craig, should commit, because we've got some locked out merch on the way that we can print. How many views would tomorrow's episode have to get on YouTube for you to wear a locked out merch T-shirt on Q&A?
I'd like to get invited back on Q&A, mainly so that I can, mainly so I can build the BHN brand more generally.
Jack's a friend. Jack's a mate. He'll be fine. Go on, if you don't want to do it, just say 1 million views. But how many views?
I tell you what I will do for you, Pat. Right?
Yeah.
If you can get me, because I'll be wearing a suit. If you can get me a BHN lapel badge.
Oh. Holy crap, Craig. Now you're putting the pressure on. Everyone's been saying enamel pins. And now you're actually going, we should have an enamel pin. Okay. I will look at that tomorrow and see how quickly we can get some done. That's hilarious. Done. And then we just got to get all the green MPs to wear them along with their ACT ones. And then and we go from there in the house. Very good. All right, Craig. Hey, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the hard work you're doing. The whānau loves you. And I can highly recommend the podcast tomorrow morning because I've already heard it. In fact, I've heard it more than Craig has, because I both heard it and then I put it together and edited it and then put it out again. So I'm the foremost expert right now on tomorrow morning's podcast, and I say people should definitely check it out.
There should be some kind of special alcohol that you should be receiving as a consequence of having to listen to that at least more than once. But thank you.
Or what about a Nicky No Boats T-shirt on Q&A? That would.
I'm working on getting a Nicky No Boats T-shirt into Parliament for a select committee appearance. So I'm hoping for that.
Very good. Graig Renney, Locked Out podcast out tomorrow morning from the CTU. Thanks, dude. We'll talk to you super soon, eh?
Thank you.